Welcome back to the Squirrel Ranch. I'm headed out to the woods this morning, and for a couple of different reasons. I'm going to try to get a little squirrel count, an unofficial update on the squirrel population. And I was beginning to get a little bit concerned because I really I've not been seeing a whole lot of squirrels. And but I've already this morning seen 6 or 7 just right around the place here. So that tells me that maybe the squirrel population is coming back. Anyway, so I'm going to go out and get a little squirrel count. Pretty excited. Had a report come in from Cole County, Missouri. Aunt Dee tells me she found somewhere on Facebook a fellow goes by the name of Ron, found what he claims to be the first morel mushroom of I guess spring 2022 here. And if you're a morel mushroom hunter and or eater, if you're a hunter, you're probably also an eater. Man, that's good news. And I've never been good at finding mushrooms, but I'm going to try to break that long record this spring. And if I can get a big load of morels, we'll clean them up and fry them up in a cast iron skillet, maybe over a fire, outdoor fire, whatever it might be. I'm going to put my snake chaps on this morning. Haven't had to be concerned about snakes up until, I'm not a snake expert and don't claim to know how a snake thinks, but no doubt if they've been denned up over the winter and we've had a few, 2 or 3 nice days in a row here, they're probably going to be coming out and they're hungry and they're going to be looking for something to eat. So I'm going to go ahead and put my snake chaps on, and something I didn't even own until probably just a few years ago, maybe 8, 10 years ago, 12 years ago or so, when I saw my first rattlesnake out here. Pretty excited. I'm going to be packing along today, carrying my dad's old Model 512 Sportmaster 22. More about that later. But I'm pretty excited about that. Been a long time. I mean, literally 45, 6, 7, 8 years since I've had this in the woods, back when I was a kid squirrel hunting. And I didn't take it out too many times. I had a single shot 22 and I took that most of the time, and this was Dad's personal gun. But anyway, he gave it to me the other day just to clean up, and I'm going to get it cleaned up and shoot it a few times, run a few shots through the barrel, and then we'll go from there. But appreciate you tuning in, and thank you, Aunt Dee, for the mushroom report.
I ran a cleaning rod down the barrel and wiped the outside down a little bit, and then I just put a few rounds in that old Remington. I wasn't really planning on shooting it. I actually intended to go ahead and shoot. I put 5 rounds in there. I was going to shoot them, and I forgot to. But I'll do that another time and give it a thorough cleaning and share a little bit more about that story. But man, it was fun walking around the woods carrying that old rifle. It had been so long since I'd been out in the woods with it, as I mentioned, and I was looking around. I'm not an expert mushroom hunter by any stretch. In fact, I'm not good at it at all. When I found one, it's been kind of by accident. I've only found them one time out here that I can recall, and that was a handful. But so I was looking around. The places I've always heard are good places to find these morel mushrooms in the spring. Down along the hillsides where it's not real sunny and where there's some moisture, and along, old dead logs, and at the base of dogwood trees and so forth. But didn't expect to find any this early, and didn't. But man, I tell you what, the ground all over out here was just torn up by the turkeys, and I was excited about that. So I actually kind of thought I might walk up on some, but I didn't. But man, it was just it's fun knowing they're out there, and knowing that we've got a good turkey flock going. I'm just back in the middle of the woods. I thought I'd sit down here a little bit and just be quiet and wait and see if we couldn't have a turkey or maybe a late morning coyote, a bobcat, whitetail, maybe a feral hog. I've actually got pictures of feral hogs coming right through just about where I'm sitting here in the middle of the night. I know I've had black bear back here on a couple of occasions at least, probably a lot more than that. And anyway, it's a pretty nice morning. The bugs and the ticks and all that aren't quite out yet. This is just mid-March. Actually they're probably out, but not in any real significant numbers. So I'm going to sit here just for a little while longer. I've been keeping an eye out for mushrooms. Haven't seen anything. I haven't seen any you either see a mushroom or you don't see it. Anyway, I'll sit here for a little bit longer, see what happens. That spot I was sitting there was just really one of my favorite areas, back on the far east side of the property there, and it kind of opens up, and it's just a great place to deer hunt, turkey hunt, and who knows, maybe I get out there this spring and see if I can't call up an old Tom. I haven't done that in a long, long time. So as you can see behind me here, I'm back at the property line between our place and the Mark Twain National Forest. So everything over there, we have the deed to, my wife and I. Everything back here, we all have the deed to, as technically as owners. We pay to keep it wild, and pay for them to fight forest fires when it's necessary, and pay for the game wardens, make sure the game laws or to do their best to make sure the game laws are obeyed and all that. But when I'm back in the woods, I always think about, right now I'm the only person on the planet who's seeing this. That crow over there that's calling, I'm probably the only person on the planet that's hearing it call. And just an update, I'm going to head back toward the cabin here in a minute, but I've seen not one squirrel this morning, and I've sat down twice and for several minutes. Not for a long time, one time for about 20 minutes, probably another time for maybe 10. That's not a long time, but that's long enough for the woods to settle down, as they say. And for anything that heard you walk in to forget that they heard anything. I did see where a fair-sized flock of turkeys came through, and in fact, they came up side of the hill and then came onto the top of this ridgetop and walked back this way. You can tell by the way the leaves were scratched, they were coming back this way. But that's kind of cool. I was hoping to walk up on some, and I haven't done that. I busted a big flock a few weeks ago. Maybe I'll put that one in this video. But anyway, no mushrooms, no squirrels, a bunch of crows, but a beautiful, beautiful day. It's about probably 65 degrees right now, I would say, give or take. And pretty nice out here. Several years ago, I went around the property lines, and any place where somebody might potentially walk from the National Forest onto our property, I put up the no trespassing signs. And just a friendly reminder, we value our privacy, and we're not real retentive about somebody stepping on the place. But I've always honored no trespassing signs, and I always hope everybody else will reciprocate. This inside of this old log, it was interesting. There's all kinds of nuts and acorns in there that had been eaten, the remnants, I should say, still there. And I don't know, some kind of a rodent, could be a mouse, chipmunk, squirrel, but something's been in there. And then those are footprints you're looking at there, and clearly something big enough to make footprints in the dirt. Either bobcat or coyote would be my guess. Would be the most likely, but who knows? Maybe they've been hanging out in there. They might have smelled something and went in there after it and get them some lunch. Who knows? But the woods is just full of that kind of stuff. But clearly, over a period of time, there's been a lot of critters inside that log, hiding and trying to stay alive, getting out of the weather and so forth. But man, I looked all around, and I really tried to stay focused on looking in the good spots that might potentially hold some mushrooms, and I didn't find anything at all, and really very little signs of life other than all the birds and the crows flying around. But it's still, it was good to get out there and get down in there in some of the spots I hadn't been in a while. I got back there on the back of this hill and had found an old deer stand that a good friend of mine, Magnus, he and I, about 15, 16 years ago on one weekend, we put up 12 of these ladder stands all around the property. And this one was number 12, I think. I think that's the last one we put up. And it's still, after all these years, still in good, still workable order. You can see where the wire I put around that brace to hold that thing in place, the tree grew around it, and sure glad it didn't kill that tree. And that support bar tree had grown around Adam, and you couldn't get that off there if you wanted to. And I crawled up there just to see if it was, just to make sure it was sound, and it is. So I'm going to get back there and maybe shore it up a little bit more, and that'll be still be a good observation stand or hunting stand, and to use, and maybe get old George or Georgie Boy or TD back there this year to maybe they'll go up there and sit on that stand instead of hunting off the deck. That tree is so cool how that grew, that oak tree. Something probably fell on it years ago and bent it, and it just grew that way. But I'm going to keep that in mind. If I ever have a need for an oak beam that's bent like that, that would really make a really cool part of a structure of some kind. So I'll keep that old tree in mind there. These old thick woods, man, I'm telling you, I know I've said it before many times, but the stuff that creeps and crawls through there, especially at night, I think we'd all be surprised. And that's why I'm so excited about getting those game cameras back out and keeping those up. That's a cool little thing. You know, at first glance, that looks like that's a big pine tree, but that's just a tiny little sapling of some kind growing out of that moss bed there on the north side of that sassafras tree. Just kind of cool. So I got done eating lunch and didn't find any mushrooms, didn't see any sign of any mushrooms. Getting a low battery here. So I got thinking, these game cameras, I've been dinking around with this game camera test. I've been calling it for about 3 or 4 weeks, and I'm way overthinking it. I'm guilty of what I'm always telling folks is don't overthink stuff. I've been overthinking it. So I got a heck of a deal. 5 of these, $48 a piece. They came with the batteries. I did have to go buy the SD cards. Those are not very expensive. All told, counting tax, everything, I think I've got about $325 in these 5 game cameras. So I'm gonna go down today. I bought a little reader from this outfit, and I'm gonna see, I can plug it into my iPhone. I think I have to download an app. I'm trying to do this right now, but it didn't show a separate app for the game camera and one for the reader. I don't know, maybe it's all in one. But anyway, I'm gonna go down and go ahead and set these up down on this south side of this ridge. Beautiful weather. It is windy, but it's got to be in the high 60s right now. It's just fantastic. Birds, the crows are out. They're just chirping, and it's just really just a spectacular day to be outside. So I'd hung that game camera up back whenever we had about 2 inches of ice, and it was pretty treacherous down in there, and much easier walking down there than that morning. But I took that camera down. It showed on the reader, showed on the readout there that it had 320 pictures, and that ended up being about, probably had 40 or maybe 50 pictures. Handful of deer, nothing out of the ordinary, bunch of squirrels, and then one critter in the middle of the night, I think it was about 2 in the morning, right in the middle of the screen. It was black, but it was real small. I couldn't tell what it was. If I didn't know better, I would think it was marten, which we don't have down here. Those are up north, way up north. And but anyway, some little critter. That's kind of stuff I'm looking for, though. These out of the ordinary things, and so that's what I'm hoping to get on these game cameras. I tried to get that one, moved it up the hill a little bit there and tried to get it positioned looking down the trail instead of right at the trail. And then I tried to do the same thing with those other 2 cameras you'll see me put up here in a minute. I went further down the side of that hill in some real thick brush, and there was a game trail here in a minute. You'll see me stand on it in motion and just kind of showing you which way it runs there. And so I felt pretty decent about that spot. But I got down there and just about tripped and slipped. You can see me walk down those hills. I didn't realize how much I slip and slide around, but there's so much stuff to trip over under those leaves, rocks and sticks and tree debris, and trees blow over and the root ball kicks up and it creates little divots, and you got that kind of stuff. And you can't see it. It kind of looks like it's fairly flat with all the leaves, but you really got to be careful walking on that stuff. But you can kind of see that game trail there. Ran down parallel with the top of that ridge there, but man, it's thick and gnarly, and should be a good spot to get some critters. Probably won't get a lot of pictures down there, but I'm hoping what we do get pictures of will be kind of cool and unique and different. Who knows what we might get. Right here's the game trail. I'm standing right on it. Deer could be using it, of course, but it's really in the gnarly brush. And man, I would think a deer, if I was a deer, I'd stay up further that way. Come down here on one of these ledges, natural ledge where you can work through. But anyway, I think I'm going to put a game camera up right here. I'm going to put 2 game cameras up on this big cedar and see what happens. That cedar tree there that I put those 2 game cameras on, man, that's an old tree. And just judging by the size, and over the years, some of them I've cut down and knocked down with the dozer and sawn them up and counted the rings. That tree's way over 100 years old, and I wouldn't be shocked if it was maybe even closer to 150, 175, maybe 200 years. It just depends on a number of factors, but definitely an old tree and somewhat of an exception. Most of these cedars we have out here, if they get to be 6, 7 inches, 8 inches in diameter, that's a pretty darn old tree. And I suspect at some point in time it's possible that hillside was clear cut years and years and years ago. Maybe when they built the Transcontinental Railroad, and man, they were cutting down about every tree they could get to make railroad ties and to build these railroad towns out of, and depots and that kind of thing. If you haven't read the book Nothing Else Like It in the World by, I think, Stephen Ambrose, that's a good read about the building of the Transcontinental Railroad. I think I got the right title on that. I could be getting my Stephen Ambrose books mixed up, but it's a really amazing story, and one that, again, if you've not read it, I think you'd enjoy. A lot of detail, maybe more than you even want on the subject, but you'll come away from it with a new appreciation about what it took to build that railroad way back when. One other knock on these darn game cameras from Wild Game Innovations, I finally figured out what the name of the company was, is they include these little spindly bungee cords for strapping around a tree, and to get around a tree of any size you have to use like 3 or 4 of them, and it's hard to keep them together, and they're falling off, picking them up. Just the only real positive about that whole system is the case. They did a really good job on the camera case itself, but everything else is, I'd have to say, below standard. This is really a gnarly place down here. Steep, rocky, brushy. I doubt if on these cameras here I'm going to get deer on them, but that's not really what I'm going after. There's I don't know. There's countless people who have game cameras up for the primary purpose of watching the deer, trying to pattern the deer if they're a serious hunter, those kinds of things. I see a lot of deer already and got a lot of pictures of deer, and I enjoy white-tailed deer, but I'm gonna see what's in this gnarly stuff, if anything, and we'll see. Again, I'm gonna try to go a couple of weeks. So I've got one new camera left that hadn't been up yet, and I've got camera number 1. That SD card reader didn't work. It's possible I don't know how to use it, but man, something like that should be self-explanatory. You should be able to plug it in, and it does what it's supposed to do. It reads that card, and you can see it on your iPhone screen. So I'm starting to see why these fellas have a 2-star rating out of 5. I got some sap on my glasses here, which get that off of there. But anyway, what's kind of cool about this down in here, this kind of place? A handful of people in the history of the world have stood where I'm standing right now, have walked here. And it's not like it's so remote that, it's not like I'm 120 miles from the nearest road like Imo and Edna Fourth. But it's remote enough, because it's so stinking rocky and brushy and all that. Why would you come down here if you didn't have to? See what happens. So after bragging about how I'm the only human being that's walked across that property in the last 1,000,000 years, I'm walking out and about 20 yards up the hill, I see a stinking Bud Light bottle laying there on the ground. It's dated March 18th, 2014. I have no idea how that got there. I know I didn't put it there. There's no way I'd have left a beer bottle out in the woods. I'm not in the habit of walking around the woods drinking beer, but dang. Come on, man.